From IFC Midnight comes See For Me, directed by Randall Okita, who directed The Lockpicker as well as some shorts and documentaries, written by Adam York and Tommy Gushu in their feature film debuts, and this focuses on the main character of Sophie, a legally blind former skier played by Skylar Davenport, a non-binary actor who is also legally blind. Talk about typecasting! But in all seriousness, it is nice that they focus on somebody who is legally blind to get the most realistic performance possible. And Sophie basically has to, come to grips with the fact, being legally blind, being a former skier, she wants to be independent. She doesn't really want to listen to her mom, even though she loves her mom. And she takes a cat-sitting job at a remote mansion where Deborah is a divorcee and basically says, hey, just watch my kitty, keep the house locked up, and everything will be fine. I'm going to go off and have a fun time. I mean, we don't really get to see her again, spoiler alert, so who the hell knows what happens? Maybe she went out to Italy and decided to bone a whole bunch of guys in an Italian village. Well, that was an awfully mean thing to say, but since we don't see her again, who the hell knows? She could have gone to Mars, Saturn, or even Uranus. Also, the cat. The cat's adorable and only seen in a few scenes. Boo! Why can't you show the cat more? But it turns out that Sophie, takes on these house-sitting jobs and is not necessarily the best person, shall we say. I'll get into spoilers here in a little bit, but to say the character of Sophie is hard to root for despite the fact that she's legally blind would be an understatement. She's kind of an absolute bitch, and Skylar Davenport plays this to a T and plays it really well. Like, I will give credit where credit is due. They do a great job here. And as the movie goes on, she talks to her friend Cam, and we find out that they have more than just a friendship and everything. Perhaps they're even in lockstep as far as, doing certain things. Again, I'll get into spoilers here in a little bit. But Cam's having a bit of a moral crisis. Well, then, after getting locked out of the house, after she sets the alarm, because Deborah's uncertain, she's going up to do whatever the fuck it is that she's doing, but she's like, okay, I trust you, but I don't trust you, let's set the alarm. Well, then Sophie goes outside for a smoke, gets locked out, and her mother had earlier sent her an email for an app called See For Me, basically to help visually impaired people and say, hey, that will help you. You'll be able to call into somebody that can see for you through your camera phone. Okay, pretty convenient app, actually. I will give them credit. And from there, she doesn't really handle the first caller all that well. But then after getting let back in by somebody named Kelly, played by Jessica Parker Kennedy, they kind of form a bit of a bond. And it turns out that Kelly has a bit of tragic backstory of her own that we get a little bit later in the movie. And she's kind of helping her and talking to her, and they form a little bit of a bond. And then, that night, some guys break into the house, seemingly looking for a whole bunch of money somewhere. Or they're looking for treasure in a hidden safe. Who knows? They got a guy with a big old drill, and he's going to just drill this whole thing. His name is Dave. Dave is here, man, so unfortunately Cheech and Chong were really, really wrong about that, despite the fact that happened years before this. So from there, we have Sophie having to call in to Kelly and basically be her eyes, not her ears because her senses are heightened, but be her eyes because, when you're legally blind, kind of hard to evade people unless you have help. So this movie isn't the most wholly original thing. That's not a knock on the writers or the director. IFC Midnight usually can produce some pretty good stuff, and this is one of the upper tier movies that they've done. They have done some stuff that's just been kind of shit, shall we say, but this is a bit of a cut above. I mean, if it hadn't been for Wait Until Dark, See No Evil, Blink, Don't Breathe, and some other stuff, and even Hush, even though Hush dealt with a woman that was deaf dealing with a home invasion, whenever you have somebody who's, a particular sense is taken away, like, they're deaf or they're blind, it adds a certain element to it. But that being said, it can be seen as a gimmick and a crutch unless you have good performances. Unfortunately, Jessica Parker Kennedy, the wrestling fan in me just can't help but say that, she turns in a good performance, and also Skylar Davenport is, let's just say, not exactly, as far as a character, I mean, not knocking the actor, they did great, but the character Sophie is not exactly easy to root for. And what do I mean by that? Not only is she a bitch, she's kind of a bit of a well, I'm blind, so I can get away with this shit. I mean, I'm sure there are people that think that stuff, but my God, it makes it really hard to root. There's really not a lot of people you can root for here. And that's not to say I want everybody to die in the movie, but there also aren't a lot of fleshed out characters. And the home invasion stuff does kind of get to where it's not like Don't Breathe. You don't have to worry about the guy from Avatar, attacking you and everything. And I didn't really care for Don't Breathe or Don't Breathe 2 Electric Boogaloo. But this is a bit more subtle with this stuff. I mean, yes, it does ramp things up eventually as far as how things go with the home invasion and, a certain twist in the second act that leads to stuff in the third act, and it comes down to, do you really want to keep being who you are? Do you actually want to make the right decision, the good decision, and not be a goddamn shitbag? I mean, I think we all go through that. When you are presented with a certain choice, what do you go with? Do you go with the right choice, or do you go with the wrong choice? Or do you go with the choice that's convenient to basically get you to the end of the movie? Okay, I'm going to get into spoilers here in a little bit, but overall, Skylar Davenport turns in a good performance. They do a really good job. Jessica Parker Candy was fine as well. Everybody else is kind of just a bit part because, the thieves get a couple, they get some screen time, but it's really just focused on Sophie and Kelly. So now let's get into spoilers. It is available on Amazon, by the way, before again, that is available on Amazon for like $7. And I certainly spent, more money on far worse movies. So it is well worth checking out, that is. So now let's get into spoilers. Okay, so Sophie, it turns out, is working with Cam and doing these house sitting things and stealing certain things that she sells for, like below retail and everything. Like how this woman, Deborah, has a bottle of wine or a bunch of bottles of wine, and she can sell it for, a big price and everything and get money. That's how she's able to stay funded and do this stuff like maybe get back on the ski slopes. But since she's legally blind, she's not so sure if she can do this. And also, she's a fucking thief. And also kind of a bitch, kind of an absolute bitch. I mean, and I get it, being blind would not be any fun. Being deaf, not having certain senses would be it would be ridiculous. But as far as the character Sophie, you quickly realize, I really don't want to root for her. Like, I don't want her to necessarily meet her end because there are shitty people out there too, but it's like, it's kind of hard to root for an anti-hero, but then at the same time, you eventually get to where you maybe have to root for her, but maybe you think, well, these are kind of the consequences of your own actions. She ends up calling the police when the home invasion happens with a few guys, makes a call to the cops, and then calls that girl Kelly, who ends up guiding her through this stuff and guiding her through the house. Well, then Sophie basically makes this call. Hey, here's what I'm going to do, guys. I'll make a deal with you because the boss is on the phone. The boss realizes, talking to, whoever the boss actually is, and I'll get into that here in just a little bit, is talking to the guy saying, well, what do you mean she's legally blind? Legally blind? Well, no witnesses, no whatever, Okay, we can just go and steal the money and do all this. We can just have Dave, who is here, man, get into the safe, and then it'll be fine. Oh, wait, the cops are coming. Hey, Sophie, can you tell the cops that it was a mistake? Yeah, I'll do that, but I want a cut. Again, I mean, negotiating with it and stuff like that, you get to do these things. That's great, but what the fuck? And they're like, oh, we don't believe you. Look in my bag. It's a wine bottle that she was going to sell, and the guy on the phone just laughing and stuff like that. Well, then from there, the cop arrives, the deputy, and she suspects that Sophie's lying. Well, Sophie is lying. And also, while all this is going on and everything, she's trying to make sure that nobody gets hurt, but that she gets her money. Well, then a deputy gets killed. And one of the guys even says, she would have got me on a breaking and entering. I would have been out in 6 months. Why do we have to kill a cop? So now all of a sudden the criminals are having a moral choice and a moral crisis and stuff like that. And meanwhile, like the mother's just completely out of the scene after like the opening few minutes. The mother's out. Deborah's having her trysts off like on the third ring of Saturn for all we know. And the cat's completely disappeared. I don't think we see the cat for the last 40 minutes. I'm going to assume that the cat took some of the money that was in the safe they were trying to break into and took it off, and I don't know, had a goddamn catnip party. Super catnip party! Meow, 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 meow. Okay, enough of that. So, essentially, what ends up happening is after the cop gets killed, it becomes clear to Sophie, well, these guys aren't really going to do, what I want them to do. Yeah, they're fucking criminals, you goddamn idiot. So what happens is she ends up doing this, and I'm referring to the character, Sophie. And Skylar's non-binary, I'm going to say they, but she, being the character of Sophie, has to use Kelly's, eyesight to take down these criminals. So she ends up killing a few of them. She ends up killing one because Kelly was a gamer as well and a former combat engineer. she can, she understands the military jargon and stuff like that, but also we see an early thing of her playing video games. So naturally, playing, some Call of Duty knockoff, at least that's what it looked like to me. I don't play that many modern video games. She ends up, saying, fire, fire, this kind of stuff, and she ends up killing one, killing another, and then suddenly somebody shows up. Well, who the hell's showing up? Who else is showing up? All the guys got dispatched, including Dave, who tried to grab a gun later, and he got killed. So, holy shit. Everybody's dead. Who's the person that's in charge on the phone? The husband. I'm shocked. The only other person it could have been. The husband's like, yeah, all this money's in here because I was going to come back and I was going to steal it because I didn't want my wife to have it in the divorce. Okay, makes sense. Why do you have so many people die? Whatever. Okay, cool, whatever. Hey, let's split it once the heat dies down. And then somebody cuts the breaker. Seemingly Sophie. How Sophie? I'm assuming the cat cut it, actually, because we never saw who cut it. And then what happens is Sophie ends up getting in a firefight with him, ends up killing him. And then, oh my God, it's like, oh no, she's getting choked out by somebody. Somebody that was out in the woods doing the searching and everything and stuff like that. And then she ends up hitting them in the head with a foreign object. I'm sorry, it's just a WCW, an international object. And beats them in the head with it and hammers them down. And seemingly the cops arrive and don't suspect anything. I don't know what the hell happened with Deborah. Deborah probably arrived at home and said, oh, there's money in the safe. Cool. So anyway, we cut to Sophie leaving a hospital. And her mother mother's basically, going to help her and everything. But she's tentative about helping her. And Sophie says, can you help push me the rest of the way? Yeah, sure. Because her mother just wants to help her. Well, then basically what happens is she's like, well, you didn't get a tip this time, and that's a real shame or whatever. Well, she wanted her backpack. Her backpack had the money because she had money in the backpack. Seemingly nothing that the cops bothered to check. Apparently the cops in Ontario, that's where this film was done, by the way, seemingly in Ontario, Canada, apparently the cops don't bother looking. Maybe the cops took the rest of the money out of the goddamn safe. Maybe Deborah never came back and stayed in Italy and the house just is desolate now. Who the hell knows? The bottom line is that Sophie now is going to be a legally blind skier, and she is going to do these great things. Cam is going to be her guide, and Kelly is going to help be her eyes. Okay. It wasn't the worst thing that I've seen, but the more I think about it, the more questions I have. Maybe if I don't take it so seriously, it is what it is. That being said, it's an easy movie to figure out. It's not necessarily deep. It does deal with a couple deep things, and I give credit where credit is due as far as a director who's done mostly shorts and documentaries besides one feature film, and writers that, if this is their first full-length feature film, they do what they can, and there's nothing wrong with taking inspiration from movies that came out in the 60s and 70s and stuff like that. What's old is new again, twisting it around, stuff like that. This sort of does remind me of Hush, but I don't know. It was good. It was good. Skylar Davenport, I think they have a very bright career in Hollywood and everything. More roles for them, please. And Jessica Parker Kennedy could also have a bright future. Everybody else, it's not that they were bad, but there just wasn't enough that I saw where I could really grade that. But I will say a B. It was well done. But again, it's hard to really cheer for Sophie. So that kind of downgrades it a little bit. I mean, I didn't have any major complaints about it, but it was definitely a cut above a lot of IFC Midnight movies. And let's see what the director and the writers can do in the future. So B for me. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Like, share, subscribe, Twitter handle in the description. I'm John Ritlin. I'll see you soon.